Hey, what's going on? This is DJ Sports. Backing in with another podcast. It's been a while since we had a new one, so we're happy to be back. And today I have a special guest, Lucas, my friend from the fantasy league. How are you doing, man? I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, bro. I'm doing well. Just, hanging out on a casual Wednesday afternoon. How you doing, man?
I'm good, good. Just ready to get into it. I feel like we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it.
So, you can follow us on our socials, GD Sports Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Be sure to check us out and send us an email and we'll respond on the show, djsportspod@gmail.com. So before we get into football, we have our beer segment. And Lucas, since you're the guest, why don't you go ahead and show us what you have?
All right, sounds good. So I got this Sam Adams Jacko pumpkin ale. It came in one of those Sam Adams variety packs that I just happened to have, so I figured, it's a good time to probably try it. So I'll go ahead and pop it open. What do you got over there?
So I have this Belching Beaver
Oh,
peanut
okay,
peanut butter milk stout. I don't know if you've ever
nice.
had Belching Beaver.
I
I
have actually, yeah.
think they're from SD.
I think it's from Oregon, no?
Are they? Hmm.
I
Doesn't
have a
say.
feeling. Yeah. I actually like it even though I don't like peanut butter. A peanut butter beer? Not bad. Funny how
You
we
don't like
both have kind
you
of
don't like
favorite
peanut
beers
butter?
there. No, not really.
Really interesting.
Uh,
So this is from Oceanside actually.
oh, okay. There you go. Sweet.
So how's your beer?
Let's see. We'll go ahead and give it a taste. Oh, wow. That's got a pretty strong pumpkin taste right there. I thought it was actually gonna have more of a beer taste, but the pumpkin is a little overpowering. I'm not really like a pumpkin spice latte kind of guy, but every now and then I'm feeling basic. So
Nice.
I'd give this 6.5. Yeah,
Six
I
and a half.
think yeah, if it had a little bit less of a pumpkin taste, I think it'd be a little bit better. Let me take another sip, just double check. Yeah, I mean, you want pumpkin, this is what you're gonna get right here. That shit smacks you in the face as soon as you take a sip. How's yours?
It's good. It's pretty heavy because it's a stout, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, you really get like a. It's basically like a peanut butter milkshake, I would say, but with alcohol.
Oh, okay. What's the percentage on it?
5.3.
Oh, nice. Mine's at 4.4, so relatively light. It drinks light. It's smooth, but you know, this would be a good type of beer to have. If you're up in the mountains over by the campfire or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like we're drinking like two opposite beers. Mine's like very heavy, dark.
Yeah, I usually go for the stouts, but this is just what I happen to have in the fridge, so I said, hey, why not?
Nice. Some leftovers from Halloween.
Yeah, it's just kind of that time. People bring beer over and they're like, hey, it's Sam Adams Variety Pack, October time, so here we go. I think it came with Oktoberfest beer and like Smooth Ale and a few others. I think Winter Beer. It was called a Sweater Weather Pack.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely had like some Oktoberfests. Those are always good to have, around this time.
Yeah, and then there's some winter ales too that are pretty good. I'm a big fan of the stouts, especially when the winter comes around and it's not really
Right.
the time to be drinking those super light beers. But I drink almost any type of beer. IPAs, I'm not a big fan of. Everything else, I'm okay.
That's exactly how I am too. Not a huge fan of
Yeah.
IPAs. My
Hmm.
co-host Reese, he loves IPAs, but I like stouts and like ales and stuff personally.
Same. Yeah, I feel like those darker, heavier beers kind of speak to me more.
I feel that.
Yeah.
On that note, let's get to the football. So, I was hoping that before we started this podcast that Odell would sign with a team, but as of right now, Wednesday 3:42, he still hasn't been signed yet. But what do you make of the situation, and do you have any guesses on where he's gonna go?
Yeah, I mean, just to start, I think the Browns completely fumbled the bag with the entire situation. I mean, I think it's very clear that he wanted to leave. They had trade offers. Apparently, they didn't make sense, but I think anytime you're going to get compensation for a player, as opposed to just kind of letting him walk for free, you're messing up. So, Browns overall, I mean, even just the situation getting to where it is, I'm very much on the Odell side, not just because I'm like a New York Giants homer, but also because I think they didn't give him the ball. I mean, this is the type of receiver where you want to target him, you want to design plays specifically for him. I get that they're more of a running team. They like to do a lot of play action, but if you're gonna invest this type of money and draft capital into a receiver like that, you want to get him the ball. So the fact that they got to the situation, I think, is completely absurd. But here we are. I think it's cool that he gets to decide his destiny, whereas he wouldn't have been able to with the trade. So that kind of works out in his favor. So I'm excited to see where he goes. I think he's got three potential destinations, if I'm not mistaken, right? He's
Yeah,
narrowed down to New Orleans, um, the
Green Bay.
Packers,
Yeah.
and the Chiefs, right? But I'm hearing also that the Patriots are like a dark horse or in the mix. I don't know. What did you think of all the whole situation?
Yeah. So I was actually gonna ask you, like, do you
Hmm.
feel like the Browns like did not use him correctly? But you basically like, what's funny? I feel like they had something figured out last year because before Odell got hurt, there was that game against the Cowboys where he was just going off, right? They had him like on
Hmm.
a jet sweep on that crazy trick play, and like him and Baker had some chemistry. But I feel like ever since then, they haven't been able to really connect at all. And I think all parties are blamed here, like in this situation. I think the
Hmm.
coaches are to blame. I think Odell's to blame. I think Baker's to blame also. Like they just weren't able to, for whatever reason, build some chemistry. Like you see him with Jarvis, and like I know him and Jarvis like line up in different spots, but like, Baker's been able to get him the ball like for years now. And Odell, what we think the more talented receiver, they just haven't been able to really figure it out.
Yeah, and you would think that because they both came from LSU and they're such a dynamic duo there, that they would have been that kind of you know dynamic duo relationship would have translated well with a solid quarterback in Baker. I mean, he's not the best, he's not the worst, probably middle of the pack. They're slightly better than average,
Right.
but it just hasn't. So I think Odell is to blame it partially as well. I mean, the way the whole situation was handled wasn't super classy. I mean, you got his dad posting this little IG video about him, which
Right.
really is, even though his dad posted it, OBJ signed off on it. He's like, okay, OBS, you could do this. Like, no worries. Like, this is my way of subtweeting or just getting the message out there that I want out. So I think he should have ideally handled it internally with the Browns, but reached the media. They made a circus out of it, so here we are. Um,
Right.
yeah, but where do you want to see him go?
Where would I want him? Out of those teams, I would say the Packers. I think him and Devontae, seeing them together would be great. Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. I also have Rodgers in one of my fantasy leagues, so I think that would be just
Right.
that way. But yeah, like the Chiefs, I don't know about the Saints because that offense has looked like pretty ugly, and you have what Trevor Simeon throwing you the ball now.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas is like we don't know what we're gonna get out of him the rest of the season, so. But Sean Payne, I mean, he might be able to figure something out, but I would say Packers and Chiefs are definitely like the two best options.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you. I mean, I think I'd love to see him on the Chiefs, but there's just so much uncertainty around that team right now, especially the offense. I mean, I know we're going to get into it later, but Mahomes has not been playing like he usually does,
Right.
which I mean, I think part of it is the offensive line, part of it is just him and his decision making, and I think the way defenses are playing him. But I think if you want to go to a contender, you want to win now. The Packers are your best shot. Although, I mean, I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers is going to be gone by the end of the season. So I think if you want to win this season, you go to the Packers. If you want to, just win long term, maybe the better option would be to go to the Chiefs. And yeah, the Saints, I would kind of rule them out as well, just because, like you said, Trevor Simeon, decent quarterback, but probably can't, you wouldn't want him, guiding you to the Super Bowl. And then with Jameis being out, he looked pretty decent while he was still there, but they don't even know if that's their long term answer at quarterback. So I think too much uncertainty there for a guy that wants to play for a contender.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So let's get to Aaron Rodgers and his whole COVID situation. We saw on the news his interview last week with Pat McAfee where
Hmm.
he's not vaccinated and he took advice from Joe Rogan and has been taking I can't say it correctly, like Incetimin or
Oh, ivermectin.
ivermectin, right?
Uh huh. Right.
Um, and he got some backlash for that. He went back on the show yesterday and kind of explained a little bit what he's talking about, but that whole situation is like all of a sudden it's kind of gone 0 to 100. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So I actually saw at first I saw all the people blowing up and saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe Aaron Rodgers is quoting MLK and he lied about the vaccination thing." So I think when he said he was immunized, it's misleading, and I think technically it is a lie. So there's that. Okay, if it's a lie, it's a lie. You lied, you got fined. So there's that part. The other part, I'm personally vaccinated. I believe in the vaccine, but I respect his decision not to get the vaccine. I think he actually had some solid points as far as you know the way the NFL handles the COVID situation, and how they make him get up at 5 in the morning every day to take a COVID test. It seems a little bit like you're kind of inconveniencing them so that they eventually fold and get the vaccine. But I mean, this guy's a 37-year-old that just won the MVP, so I'm sure his body and these decisions he makes are very important to him. So if he doesn't want to get it, fine. Like, don't get it. I don't think he wanted this to turn into a circus. I mean, he mentioned it during the first McAfee interview. Like, hey man, like I just want this all to be private. I think medical records and all that should be private. Clearly, it's not anymore. So I I think it's a little blown out of proportion. However, with this whole thing happening, I think he actually ended up winning. Like, I know it's weird to say, like, that he won by getting COVID, but let's look at what happened because he got COVID. According to him and Joe Rogan and a few other guys, and I think there's a Israel study where they studied about 2.5 million people, and they confirmed that you have better protection against COVID if you actually get COVID and survive instead of getting the vaccine. So if we're going by that logic, and it's true, he has like a 9 month immunity and a better immunity from COVID than he would have if he would have gotten the vaccine. B, the whole like contract situation coming up, or that was an issue in the off season with, he wanted out. The Packers were like, okay, well, if you want out, then fine. We got Jordan Love. We got to see what Jordan Love is like. Jordan Love wasn't, didn't have a great game. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good NFL quarterback, but if that was the Packers showing their hand, I don't think they have a lot of leverage after that. I don't know. I mean, what did you think about just seeing Jordan Love and how he played?
Yeah, so I watched most of that game. He did not look good at all, and I felt like for about like 75% of the game, Matt LaFleur was like putting the training wheels on him. Like they
Hmm.
were running a
Yeah.
lot. He wasn't throwing anything past like 5 yards. And like you can tell he was like just kind of out of his depth and not really prepared, which it's not surprising because they only had like less than a week basically to go from having Rodgers to and now you have to play against Kansas City. Arrowhead's a tough place to play in. So for your first start, like um, you can kind of expect it. But like you said, we're gonna get into it. But the Chiefs also looked pretty bad too that game. They only scored 13 points. Um, the Packers looked terrible the entire game, and they were right there at the end after that Lazard touchdown. So
Yeah, it was a very winnable game. I definitely agree with you on that. The Chiefs, I mean, I'm a Giants fan. I watched the game the week before, and we could have won that game. We had multiple opportunities to win that game. We
right.
didn't, but the fact that we were kind of in the ballpark the whole game was a bit should be concerning to them because even though I love the Giants, they're not a very good team this year. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things to be concerned for with the Chiefs. I'm not saying they can't turn it around. They definitely can, and they technically are, since I think they just put together back-to-back wins there. But still, not the same kind of confidence you had with the Chiefs last year and the year before. So as far as the whole Aaron Rodgers vaccination thing, do you think the league handled it right with just finding them? I think it was almost $300,000 or something like that.
So yeah, my I would say like um other than Rodgers lying, then like it's also kind of not fair for like other unvaccinated players. Like he was just like walking around with the mask and stuff, like doing press conferences with no masks when like they have rules like they're supposed to wear a mask at all times. So I think that was also like kind of um you know unfortunate on Rogers' part, I would say. But like the fine also feels like a slap on the wrist. I feel like they have to pay like $14,000 or something. And like I mean that's basically nothing. And I saw a report that other teams in the NFL are furious on how the NFL handled like the punishment. So it's not surprising because I think CD Lamb like he got fined more for the taunting penalty. So
Really? How much
yeah,
did he get fined?
I think like 30.
30,000?
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
something
I
like that.
really wonder how they come up with these dollar figures. Like, hey, we're gonna fine you this much. I
Right.
mean, is there a scale? Is it a level one, level two offense type of thing?
It feels so
Maybe
arbitrary.
it
Like
does.
like still get the Packers got fined 30K, but like Roger Goodell will suspend Brady 4 games because he feels like it. Like it doesn't make sense. It's all just like kind of like whatever they feel like punishing.
Yeah, it's really weird. So, I mean, I think there should have been some sort of punishment. I don't know if he lied to the NFL or if he lied to the media. I believe he lied to the media by saying he's immunized, but I believe he told the NFL, at least according to his interview, that
Okay.
what his vaccination status was. I think they're aware and they were aware that he was going to proceed without being vaccinated.
Okay.
So,
I know that the Packers definitely knew. And I guess he like went to his he had a personal doctor and
mhm.
he like sent reports to the Packers saying like the personal doctor declared him immunized and the Packers like didn't accept the report because like it wasn't
Mm.
one of their doctors or something. So it's just a strange situation all around, I think.
Yeah, very strange. I mean, if he really is, I think allergic to the first two, like the Moderna and the Pfizer. Okay, I get it. The J&J, it's a little bit concerning that I think they recalled it for a little bit and then they put it back on the market. But hey, as long as he does whatever he has to do to be an unvaccinated player in the NFL and maybe dial it down a little bit on the complaints about all the things he has to do, then I think it is what it is, right?
Yeah. It's he's I'm sure he's gonna be back on the field Sunday. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like at the end of the day, this guy's a moneymaker for the NFL. There's no way they're gonna suspend him. They-
Right.
I
Especially
think the. Mhm.
like halfway in the season right now. Or like it's like crunch time, there's a lot of big games.
Yeah, they just lost one of the two games, the only two losses that they had. So they're definitely not looking to, continue losing games or disadvantage themselves. And the NFL wants to keep, him making money for them. I
Right.
think
Well, yeah.
yeah, State Farm is like, yeah, like we don't agree with what he said, but we're still gonna, keep him
Keep
as
going.
a spokesperson. And of course, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of State Farm, let's switch to another quarterback. Patrick Mahomes, he like you mentioned, he's been struggling. It hasn't looked the same offense that we've seen the last couple of years. like just the juggernaut offense that was looked unstoppable. They seem to have a lot of flaws. And is it just like them losing Sammy Watkins or like Clyde? Or what do you think the issues are?
I think they earlier in the season they were struggling to run the ball, so they became almost kind of one dimensional. It's been harder for them to run the ball, especially without Edwards-Helaire, but I think he's going to come back eventually, and that hopefully should get resolved. The offensive line, they're not the most talented group in the NFL. I don't think they're the worst either, but having an inferior offensive line to what he had last season and the season before definitely doesn't help. So I think this is a team that can still go uh, a ways deep into the postseason, possibly even the Super Bowl. But they just have to get it together. I mean, if you're deficient in one area like the offensive line, you got to scheme around that. If you know that you've been struggling to run the ball, then maybe you find creative ways to run the ball. Maybe you do some more jet sweeps to Tyreek Hill or something like that. Maybe more screens. That's technically an extension of the running game in a way. But I think all the problems are correctable. I mean, you probably won't find offensive line help at this stage of the season. Running backs, I mean, you can't really trade for one. If running back was really that big of an issue, I think they would have traded for one. They didn't. They did trade for a defensive. No, it was a defensive end. They traded for Melvin Ingram from the Steelers. So I think they're aware of their inefficiencies both on offense and defense. I know we're supposed to talk about offense now, but I think awareness is step number one. At least they know, hey, we're not just gonna pretend everything's cool and try to fly by. I think they'll make the adjustments, but we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of just like Mahomes. You got more tape on him.
Mm-hmm.
Defenses. The NFL is like very good about like just kind of figuring you out and making
Mm-hmm.
you adapt into new situations because the league like is so quick at catching up to everybody else. So I think that's part of the reason. And like you said, the lack of a running game has been huge. And I also feel like something's off with their chemistry, like,
Mm-hmm.
and Mahomes has been forcing it a little too much. He's been trying for some of those risky plays that, he's used to completing that we see all the time. But now this year, all of a sudden, he's throwing more picks. He's just making more bad decisions. And, when he's doing those crazy, like, scramble plays, it looks good when it works, but when it doesn't work, you're just scratching your head. So,
Yeah.
I think like Andy Reid told him to kind of slow it down a little bit, and the last couple of games they've been running a lot with Daryl Williams, and we saw Derek
Mm-hmm.
Gore score touchdowns. So I think when Clyde comes back, which should be in a couple of weeks, we might see just more reliance on the run game, trying to give Mahomes some of a breather.
Yeah, I think anytime you can run the ball effectively, it takes a lot of pressure off of your quarterback. So I think getting Edwards-Helaire back is going to help a lot. But overall, just improving the running lane, getting bigger holes open, I think it's going to go a long way as well. And I agree. The whole having more tape on someone helps a lot. I mean, the fact that I think these past few weeks their offense has been held to just over 15 points or so, maybe 20 points against the Giants, and I want to say only 13 points against the Packers. Packers are a decent defense, but yeah, this is an offense that's expected to put up 30 easily every week. So
Right.
got to get back to that somehow.
Yeah. Let's stay in the AFC West. I
Hmm.
wanted to just quickly talk about Broncos Cowboys.
Hmm.
That was like one of the bigger upsets I think we had all season. The Broncos were up 30-0 at one point, and all of a sudden, you know, every single team in the AFC West has 5 wins, so that division
Mm.
looks wide open. Um, like, do you have a do you think it was more of the Broncos just had an amazing game, or like the Cowboys just didn't show up?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think Denver really put a lot of effort into stopping the running game, which made the Cowboys one dimensional. Um, Dak did just come back. I think he was out a few weeks, and there was a bye week, so some of the chemistry was lacking there. I know he missed a few throws. There was a deep throw to CeeDee Lamb that would have been a wide open touchdown that he just overthrew. So those are some of the issues that obviously went in the Broncos' favor, but they're starting to put it together. I mean, early in the season they looked very good, and they went on somewhat of a losing slump, and now they're back to winning, or they just won one game. You think that they might be back. Offense is looking a lot better with Jerry Judy. I mean, I think when you think of the receivers they got, or just the weapons overall, you've got Judy, Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and then you've got two, or Noah Font, of course. Font?
I think
Fant?
Fant.
Fant. Okay. And then you've got Melvin Gordon, that other running back that just kind of came out of nowhere and had a monster game. You've
Devontae.
got some pretty good, yeah, yeah. You've got some good weapons there that are gonna help your average quarterback. Teddy Two Gloves, not an all-star quarterback, also not bad. You kind of think of him as more of a game manager, but hey, if he has all these weapons, I think they can at least have a better chance of winning the division. I mean, it's still up for grabs, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
how do you see I guess that game and the result, how it ended up playing out?
Yeah. So I mean, I look at Cowboys. It's definitely like one of the contenders in the FC.
Hmm.
And I think there's just a bad matchup for the Broncos. They're like a heavy run first offense. And Dallas' defense has been pretty good this year. That's why they have a good record. But they were just able to get it done. And Teddy doesn't really make too many mistakes. He doesn't. He's not going to throw like a 300 yards, 3 touchdown type of game. But he won't really turn the ball over. And sometimes that's all you need to do when you have a good defense.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, they've got some very talented players on defense at I think every position level. Especially in the back end with Justin Simmons. But I think whenever you can, you play to your defensive strength and your offense does just enough to win, even though they put up 30 points. I mean, that's a lot for offense to put up. Um, I think you have a good chance of winning. The Cowboys are a contender, as much as I, hate to admit it, and I'm a Giants homer. I think they are one of the NFC contenders. I think that they're looking like they're going to run away with the division. But either way, I think worst case scenario, they'll definitely make a wild card run, and from there, who knows? I mean, the defense has exceeded expectations up until this point. This is probably the first game where you can argue that the defense kind of let them down, although the offense let them down as well, with them trailing pretty much the entire game, or actually the entire game. I don't think they ever had a lead. So I think offensively they'll put it together. They'll be fine. I mean, Dak will get back in sync with his receivers and just kind of being on the field. And then on defense, I mean, the front seven, you never really worry about them. The back end, I think, is who you really worry about. Can they continue to get it done? We'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how that AFC West division plays out. It could be anybody.
What do you make of the Raiders out there?
The Henry Ruggs stuff was unfortunate. He was having a great season. I think he's really talented, but they obviously don't have him anymore. I think the Raiders, like, they're like one of those teams that can lose to anybody, but they can also beat anybody on a good day. Uh,
Yeah.
we saw them beat the Ravens, who were really good. Week
Mm-hmm.
one of the season, they always give the Chiefs a tough time. You know, you just have to like cut out some of the turnovers, the penalties that we see. And I think they could, they have a good running game. They have Darren Waller and Hunter Renfro, good receiving core. And the defense is hit or miss, but I think with Derek Carr is playing well, like they they can they can like sneak into the wild card for sure if they don't win the division.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr is having one of the better seasons he's had. We'll see how the entire season comes together, but so far, I think most people have been impressed by Derek Carr. He's definitely exceeded expectations. you know, losing Henry Ruggs was big, but luckily they still have Darren Waller, who I think is almost like their number one receiver. I mean, the other
Right.
day when they played the Giants, they lined him up as a receiver. He ended up with like 9 catches, almost 100 yards. So if you need a go-to receiver, you've got him. They run the ball very effectively. I think defensively, they get good pressure off the edge. Um, their secondary is hit or miss, but I think the linebacker core is pretty solid. So, yeah, that division is totally up for grabs at this point. It's really hard to pinpoint and say someone is going to win it. Who would you put your money on?
I mean, I feel like I should be saying the Chiefs, right? I feel
Hmm.
like at some point we're gonna figure it out. But honestly, if I had a bet right now, I would say the Chargers. I think they're very
Mm,
complete on both sides of the ball. I like Brandon Staley. I think he's a good coach.
yeah.
You just need to get some consistency going, and I think they can you know be a real contender in the AFC.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. The Chargers, amidst all the headlines and all the wacky stuff going on in that division, they're kind of I wouldn't say forgotten, but they're kind of flying under the radar there. Justin Herbert's looking very good in his second year, so I think the sky's the limit for them. So I would agree with you and go with the Chargers.
Yeah. So since you were here, I wanted to kind of just do a question about the Giants. Like, how do
Oh,
you feel
okay.
about the roster right now, their season, and just like the future ahead?
Oh man. Okay. So I would start by saying the general manager, I have no idea how Dave Gettleman still has his job. I mean, he's been a colossal failure at this point. He's had some wins, Daniel Jones actually looking pretty good. I know everyone gave him a lot of shit for taking them so high, sixth overall that year. And really a year that there weren't any amazing quarterback prospects. But, he's looking okay. The offensive line is a complete mess. Even when we get our left tackle back, I think, and we lost 2 starters at the very beginning of the season. But even so, there's just no depth there. I don't know how they put together such a decent, running attack against the Raiders last week, but not a great I think roster overall. There's some pieces there. I think on the offensive side, we obviously have a lot of talent at receiver. Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney is looking great. Sterling Shepard was on pace to having a career season, and he's been in and out with injuries. Evan Ingram, very inconsistent. Might be putting it together. I don't know. Surprised he didn't get traded. Saquon, you want to see more of him, especially a guy you invested so much in. Second overall pick, and he just hasn't been on the field. I think he'll be back right after this bye week. He had what we thought was a minor ankle sprain. Ended up keeping him out 3 to 4 weeks. But I'm excited to see the full complement of the offense. I don't think we've seen that. Maybe we've seen it like for one entire game the entire season. Yeah, I'm talking our starting left tackle out there who's been out the past few weeks, Saquon, our top three receivers. Uh, I don't there we haven't seen a lot of that. So when we see all of that, I think we'll be better equipped to make a judgment. But I think as far as decision making goes from the front office, it's been very bad. Defensively, again, there's some pieces there. We gave Leonard Williams a lot of money. I think he's making around 20 million a year. So that's Aaron Donald type money, which he's no Aaron Donald by any means. He's a good player. He's been a little up and down this season. I think some of it might be tied to the whole getting paid, and I was like, I could chill a little bit. But I think outside of that, you've got a corner and James Bradbury who kind of took a step back. We spent a lot of money getting a Dory Jackson. He's been up and down this season. Xavier McKinney is looking good. He's had a couple interceptions the other week, so I think he's a good piece to build around there. But it's really gonna the future of the team is really gonna depend on who the next GM is, assuming he gets fired, which I don't see how he doesn't. I think going back the past 3 years, he's had a horrible record. I think tied with the league worst since 2017 with the Jets. So that's basically crying and saying like, please, like, come hire a new guy. The head coach Joe Judge, I'm optimistic on him. I think we got off to a very slow start this season, which was concerning. I mean, the games we did lose, we lost by very small margins. 1 or 3 points, with the exception of that horrible blowout against the Rams. But I think you can make a case for him staying. I wouldn't mind him staying an extra year. The general manager, though, I think has to go. So that's kind of my assessment on the Giants. So what do you think about them?
So yeah, I'm waiting for Saquon to come back in one of my leagues. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
hoping he comes back, back to 100%. But yeah, I do like the receiving core, as you said. You have a lot of talent there, and like Kadarius, he's shown flashes of being like just an athletic freak of nature to be.
Yeah,
Like,
very explosive player. Like, it's one of those, you get the ball in his hands and your eyes are glued to the TV. Like, what's this guy gonna do?
yeah, so I think like he's healthy. With Daniel Jones, like get more consistent play from him, then there's some building blocks for the future for sure. Do you feel like they need to move Saquon at some point, or
I wouldn't. And I think another thing I forgot to mention, which actually ties into the whole Saquon thing, is Jason Garrett. I have no idea how he still has a job. He is just such a bad offensive coordinator. I mean, it, I think our offense lacks identity. You want to think we're a run first team, even though we pass a lot more and we're pretty successful at passing, ironically. But there's just no consistency in the offense. And I know some of it has to do with injuries, but the play calling, I mean, I sit there and I watch these games. I'm like, why would you call that right now? You talk about you're just inside of field goal range, for example, and then you call a backward screen or some sort of play that could potentially lose you 5 yards. It's like, points aren't easy to come by, and you're just gonna gamble it all away like that. And when you gamble, is not the right time. I think when it comes to Saquon, he can be a very good back in this league, especially in this offense. You just got to give him the opportunity. And I'm not saying he hasn't had the opportunity, but when the play calling is so bad, there's only so much you could do. I think part of it kind of comes down to him as well. I mean, he's the type of guy where you give him a run up the middle, he might try to bounce it when it's not really there. So there's some things he can improve there. But if you invested a second overall pick in him, I think you give him at least that 5th year option in the contract, and see what you have there.
yeah, they definitely need to throw the ball to him more. I would say
I agree. I mean,
a little
his
faster.
best game this season was against the Saints, and what did they do? They threw to him. He had a beautiful streak down the sideline and scored off of that. So he can be a receiver. He can be almost like a receiver. So I agree with you. Definitely get him more involved in the passing game.
Right. And speaking about Jason Garrett, like I don't know how the Giants thought like that was a good idea to hire him after all. They saw him at Dallas and thought like, yeah, that's what we want. That didn't really
Yeah,
make sense to me.
I'll tell you why. So they hired Joe Judge, and then the front office or ownership basically recommended that they hire Jason Garrett because he was a former staff member and had head coaching experience. I mean, he does, but they basically hired him as a way to hedge their bet on Joe Judge, because Joe Judge at the time had been a receivers coach and a special teams coordinator, never been a head coach. They're like, hey, this could go south. So, in case it does, why don't we have an offensive coordinator who has a lot of head coaching experience? Then, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious it didn't work out. I don't think that Joe Judge wanted this guy to begin with, but he's kind of he I think is currently stuck with them, but who knows what will happen at the end of the season. But I think at a minimum, at the bare minimum, Dave Gettleman, the GM, and Jason Garrett, the offensive coordinator, have to go. Those are non-negotiable, at least for me. And I think most Giants fans would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a non-Giants fan, I agree with you too. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think Joe Judge is the answer. Um, some of the things he does are just don't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of other people in the media as well that agree. Our beat writer Jordan Renan, he's always saying, like, yeah, I think a mid-season firing would be dramatic, but I mean, who knows? Because at this point, time is of the essence. Like, especially if you're thinking about, you know, turning the entire thing on its head. Who knows what's going to happen?
Right. Right. So let's transition to the Browns Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
It was a blowout for the Browns, and that division is also up for grabs. We saw the Steelers win Monday night in a close game. So do you have a pick that you think is going to come out of there?
You know what? This is actually it was something I said in my other podcast, and I firmly believe in it. I think 3 out of the 4 teams in that division will end up making the playoffs. There's a lot of talent there. I agree, it is a complete toss up. I think the Ravens have a slight edge over the other teams in that division, but when you look at the division, you're like, man, every time they play each other, they're just gonna completely try to annihilate each other. I mean, you saw Cincinnati blowing out the Ravens last week, which made you think, oh wow, like these guys are serious, and then
Right.
they come back and lose to the Browns. So not that the Browns are a bad team, but they're not as highly regarded as the Ravens. So it was definitely a bit of a shock to me, that especially that the margin of victory was so wide. But I think the Bengals are still a little young, so they're still kind of figuring it out. I think they have to figure out how to cope with all the success as well, because you're probably feeling invincible after beating the Ravens like that, and then you visit the Browns, or the Browns visited them. I forget where they played, but reality really smacked them in the face there.
Mhm. Yeah, and they also lost to the Jets the week before too.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a very up and down team. I think amazing talent there. Definitely a lot of talent for the future. I mean, between the second year quarterback in Joe Burrow, and his now favorite target Jamar Chase, that they're going to be succeeding together for many years. Um, and we'll see where they end up. I mean, they're running the ball effectively, which is a bit surprising considering how bad their offensive line is. Um, and then you got the Browns, who, once they got Nick Chubb back, full steam ahead, which is good because then it opens up the play action and some of the other, passing elements that you weren't really seeing while he was out. So I don't know if do you know if Kareem Hunt is out for the rest of the season?
I'm not sure. I think he'll be back at some point. I do
Okay.
know that Nick Chubb was on the COVID list, or still is on the COVID list.
He just got on, yeah. So I think he's out for this week, and it'll probably be Dearness Johnson starting in place of him, who isn't a bad backup either. You talk about a third string running back who I think got 140 yards in his first start. So
Right. That game on
pretty,
Thursday night, yeah, he was.
yeah, yeah. So a pretty decent option there, good depth. But as far as the division goes, I'd probably see the Ravens taking it, and mm, more likely the Browns and the Bengals getting a wild card spot if they both don't get one. The Steelers, I think at this point, are kind of outside looking in just because of how Big Ben's looking, and I know they got some injuries now. I think Claypool's out a few weeks, so that's really going to hurt their chances of trying to get into the playoffs. How do
Right.
you see the division shaking out?
Yeah. I have to agree with you. I feel like with Lamar, the way he's playing, Ravens are, which I would say are the favorites. him and Hollywood Brown have really been exploding this season. That defense is still good enough.
Hmm.
I think they have probably the best coach in that division too. So
You're
um,
right.
I would give the nod to them.
Okay. Yeah. And as far as the game goes, I know you wanted to talk about the Browns and Bengals. I think it's a very good performance by the Browns. I just want to see that more consistently. I know defensively and offensively they're very talented. We just haven't really seen that talent being put together consistently. So if we can get that from them, I mean, sky's the limit. But I
Right.
don't know. Do you feel like they're pretty inconsistent as well?
Yeah. I feel like it kind of goes with Baker. How does he play?
Yeah.
What type of game is he gonna have? But I also think like people Baker gets a lot of the criticism. Um, but I think at the end of the day, like this whole team basically is gonna revolve around Nick Chubb. I think like
Mm.
he's the centerpiece and really the engine of it. Like he was out for a couple of games and we can see like the drastic difference in the offense. They're a run first team. They have I think they have a really good offensive line, and then you had Kareem
Mhm.
out too, so obviously that's going to be a huge difference on how your offense is going to run. So I think as long as Nick Chubb is healthy, like they'll be a contender for the playoffs for sure. Like we saw how they played last season.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you think of the Browns, you think of Baker Mayfield, but really it's Nick Chubb that kind of gets their offense going. I think they just gave him a big extension during the offseason too. So if you want to see how important, a player is, just follow the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I want to do like a quick fantasy check-in. So what this
Okay.
is like, I don't know how many leagues you're in, but like,
Hmm.
you can just talk about all of them or just one of them, and just kind of see like how your teams are doing and like how you're feeling about just the playoffs coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in three leagues right now. One of them is with a bunch of comics, kind of in my local scene. That's like a sleeper. First time doing sleeper. It's like 12 teams, but two QBs. So it's a little different, but I'm adapting fine. Uh, Other two leagues are just standard 12-man leagues. I'm in one of them with you, another one just with a bunch of college buddies. So I kind of made the mistake of drafting a lot of similar players, and I think it was more based on value and kind of where they landed in the draft. So, for example, Chris Carson, I believe I have him in all three of my leagues, and he's been out the past few weeks. So that's definitely hurt my team. I've been doing a decent job as far as like picking up other players to start in place of him. I picked up Leonard Fournette in a couple of leagues as well, so he's been like a surprisingly good addition to the team. Which I know going into the season you weren't sure, is he going to get the majority of the carries? Is Rojo going to get the majority? Is there going to be a 50-50 split? I think a lot of people kind of underestimated Leonard Fournette, so I said no, this guy's solid. I think he's going to do great. So that's why I drafted him in multiple leagues, and that ended up paying dividends and still is, knock on wood. Um, Let me see what else I had as far as you mentioned Hollywood Brown earlier. I did draft him in one of my leagues, and he's doing amazing. Way better than expected. I think everyone thought of him as like a middle of the road receiver, and now he's turning into a very solid WR1 and potentially even like a top 10. I don't have him in any of my leagues, but man, I've been so impressed by Cooper Cup. Not just outside of fantasy too, just the things he's been able to do, the astronomical leap is crazy. I mean,
Right.
who would have thought he'd have like such good chemistry with Matthew Stafford so early on too?
Yeah,
Um,
like instantly.
and then Matthew Stafford too. I mean, he's talk about a guy who came with a heavy price tag. This guy is immediately paying dividends. I mean, he was worth the two first round picks, or was it three? Was it three or two?
I think it was two and a second rounder too.
Two in this. Yeah, I mean, hey, if I'm the Rams, really don't care. I don't know if you saw it, but I think Les Snead, the GM, that had a mug, a coffee mug that I think it said "fuck your picks" or "fuck those picks." Like he
Yeah,
really doesn't care. And hey, I agree with him. Next year they don't have a pick until the fourth round, but all the talent they got and that they're gonna have for the next season, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean,
yeah.
it,
I mean, as a Rams fan, I can't complain. The team's been looking great, and you know, draft picks, like I don't want to say they're overrated, but they're very questionable because, I look at a team like the Raiders, who I think they just cut their first round pick from last year,
mm-hmm,
uh, and like so you never know how they're gonna pan out, and if you have like a known commodity, someone like Matthew Stafford, you know, why not trade for him? Like you or even someone like Von Miller or Jalen Ramsey, like you wish
mm-hmm.
one of those draft picks were even like a close as good to one of those guys. So like why take that chance? And so far it's working, but I feel like we have to win soon, otherwise it's all going to come back and hit us.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything comes at a price for sure. It's not like we haven't seen anything like this in the past. Maybe not as aggressive, at least as far as when I've been watching football, I haven't seen such an aggressive push towards, a win now, fuck the picks kind of attitude. But it's definitely there. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. I think, they lost to the Titans last week, so you get a little concerned, but at the same time, the Titans are a very good team. I think they're very underrated. I think their defense is very underrated, and I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with when Derrick Henry comes back. Even now, I mean, hey, if your offense puts up just enough points and your defense does that good of a job, I think the sky's the limit.
You think Derrick Henry's going to come back this season?
I think he'll come back for the playoffs. Yeah, I think they said 6 to 10 weeks. And I forget what week he got injured in. Was it week 8?
Week 8, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. So even if you take the worst case scenario, from week 8, you're looking at week 18, assuming you get surgery done within the same week, which I believe you did. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, we do have luckily 18 NFL weeks this year. So if they can get him back for that first round of playoffs, I think they're good. And who
Right.
knows? I mean, maybe they get the number one seed and they get a first round bye, which gives them an additional week to come
Yeah.
back. Now,
Yeah, that would be
I
huge.
don't, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the rest of their schedule looks like, but their division seems pretty easy. I think they still have a good amount of division games left. So there's a chance that he can come back. Definitely for the playoffs, and I think most definitely if they get the number one seed. Um, Fantasy wise, I think he's been good while on the field. I mean, you know, if you're talking about yards, non PPR, he's probably the best running back to have. I feel like most leagues now are either half or full PPR. I mean, do you have any leagues you're in that are non PPR?
Now all three of my leagues that I'm in right now are half PPR.
Yeah, kind of weird how they kind of forced it on us. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like I was one of those people that didn't want PPR, um, because I don't believe in the concept of you get a point for catching the ball. You get even if it's a half PPR, you get you catch a ball, you gain 0 yards, you still get half a point. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. That's kind of like to me having like that participation trophy kind of mentality. But I mean, it is what it is, right? It's just something you got to factor in.
Yeah.
So if you're drafting a receiver like a Deshaun Jackson, for example, he's probably not going to get a lot of volume, but he'll get you, possibly that 50-yard catch, that 80-yard catch, or you know, those catches with the TD. So just something to take into account, right?
Yeah, I think it's just like so I played standard for a long time, like for
Mm-hmm.
basically like, you know, first 8 years or 9 years I played fantasy. I think it's just like for a little more balance, I guess. The running backs were getting too like overpowered. Um
Mm.
so
Overvalued, you mean?
overvalued, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that because when you're playing non PPR and you have a running back that's gonna, get 20 carries a game, that's I mean, dude.
Yeah.
That is extremely valuable, and there's very few of those running backs out there. So in a way, the half PPR kind of does tilt the scales out of their favor and just makes them a little bit more equal to other players. However, the full point PPR, that puts you could argue more value on the receivers, especially like a Devonte Adams, who you know is going to get 5 to 7 catches minimum per game. I mean,
Right.
hard to see you taking him instead of a Derrick Henry, 9 times out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Assuming they're healthy.
Yeah. So I guess
Yeah.
half is like the balance. Just
Yeah.
really.
Let's see. Other fantasy notes. I think who's been a surprisingly good addition, or I guess up and coming fantasy player, Dawson Knox.
Dawson Knox.
Which, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm in the dynasty league. Someone dropped him and I picked him up. And I cannot believe that someone dropped him. I mean, we have such deep benches. I think we have 10 bench slots in this league. And someone dropped Dawson Knox. I'm like, are you kidding me? He's having a breakout year. He's going to be even better next year. Like, how could you drop this guy? But hey, I mean, his loss my my gain.
Yeah.
Um,
10 slots.
I,
That's really deep benches.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's 10. It's definitely more than 5. I could tell you that. But I was really surprised, and I think tight ends and fantasy are so hard. It's so hard to get. There's so few like top tier tight ends in fantasy that getting someone like that I think is huge, or even trading for someone like him could be huge.
Right.
Yeah. How are you doing in fantasy?
So in one of my leagues, I'm 3-6. It's been a struggle. I had last week I had Aaron Rodgers, Derrick Henry, and Henry Ruggs. Um,
Oh,
so I actually had Henry Ruggs in all three of my leagues. I had to drop him.
oh
you know,
man.
so that
Yeah.
that league is I'm doing okay in my other two, but that one like I'm fighting for the playoffs. So the good thing is that we have 8 teams that make the playoffs, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a little easier out of 12. And I'm fourth in points, fourth or fifth or something, but I've just lost a bunch of close games, so I just have
Oh
to
man.
make some moves, get back to it. Another league, I'm 5-4, I think sixth place, so doing
Mm-hmm.
okay. Just got McCaffrey back. And then in our league, I'm 6-3 in second place, doing pretty well. That's
Nice.
definitely best league I'm doing in. Getting Saquon back. I have Lamar, and during the draft, I was a little worried about taking Evans and Godwin back to back as my receivers.
Oh, really?
I thought it was a little risky, but so far it's been pretty solid. Godwin's been consistent. Mike Evans has those games where he'll get you like 3 points or something, 4 points,
Mm-hmm.
but he also has like those 3 touchdown games where he'll get you like 25, 30 points. So 6-3, can't complain.
Yeah, I would say you might want to consider trading Mike Evans, depending on where the trade deadline is in those leagues. I know in our league it's funny. I'm middle of the pack. I think there's a few different teams that are 5-4, and I think I'm one of them. So we're all there. There's like 4 or 5 teams that are kind of stuck there in that same record, but I have very few points for. I think I might have the fewest points for out of all those teams. So I got to get a couple more wins to solidify my playoff spot.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm doing okay there. Like I said, I had Chris Carson there. I'm getting him back soon. Um, I'm getting hopefully Dalvin Cook back within a week. I don't know how long he's going to be out. But luckily, I have his backup, so that's good. And his backup actually does pretty well. I think Alexander Matheson, he
Madison, yeah.
usually performs just as well. Maybe not exactly as well, but he'll get you double digit points usually when Dalvin Cook is out.
Yeah. I actually had him in one of my leagues and I traded him for David Harris because the Dalvin Cook
Oh.
owner wanted Madison so badly.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I almost dropped him, and I was like, "Wait, thank God I didn't because this guy has COVID."
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely one of the better handcuffs to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking at the standings right now, and you have 901. Someone else has 910, 959, 927, 956. So yeah, just you're on the seventh place right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You're saying points. I was like, wait, 9 and 21. It's like no, 9-21. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, I get those points up too. I've had Tannehill too, who he's not a bad quarterback, but fantasy wise, he doesn't get you a ton of points. So I might consider trading for a better quarterback at some point if I can find a decent trade package there. I usually prefer those trades where I'll send you a replacement and I'll give you another player, like a 2-for-1 instead of just a straight up like receiver for quarterback or something like that. But who knows? I might have to look and see what people want to trade. Are you looking
Yeah.
to trade anyone?
Right now I'm pretty happy with my team.
Okay.
Like you said, maybe Mike Evans. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I could consider that. AB's he might be out for a couple of weeks, so you know
Oh,
we'll see how that situation goes because if he's out for a while, then I have no reason to trade him or Godwin right now. Um,
right.
but I just want to see my team at full strength. With Saquon back.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Just kind of go from there. I think we still have a couple weeks until the trade deadline. So,
Yeah. I hear you.
but yeah, thanks for coming on, Lucas. I appreciate it. Do you wanna plug your podcast before you head out?
Oh yeah, sure. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. So my podcast is called Division Rivals. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify. It's comprehensive NFL coverage with me and two other co-hosts. I'm a Giants fan. Got another Giants fan there, and a Cowboys fan, which is why we call it Division Rivals. And we have a lot of fun. We make sure to cover the entire NFL and don't really get into our teams until the very end because that's when we really start bickering at each other and kind of going at it. But it's a great time. Check us out if you ever want to see somewhat of a fun kind of more dynamic NFL podcast. We're all comics too, so we usually have a lot of fun, make a lot of jokes. Um, yeah, man, Dev, I had a great time here. I hope you continue, doing more episodes and sticking with this thing.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Would love to come on your podcast at some point if you guys would have me. I know we
Yeah,
were thinking about doing
absolutely.
it in person, and I hope we can make that happen one day because I feel like it would be a lot better, than over Zoom.
Yeah, for sure. I know we record at a local comedy club in Huntington Beach, so if we can get you on soon, we'll definitely reach out to you.
All right, sounds good, man, and appreciate you coming on as always.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Take care.